So our process is we're going to switch x and y. So we're going to say x equals f of x squared. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides to solve it. So we get the square root of x equals f of x. And you guys do know that when you take the square root of something, you have to say plus or minus. Here we don't have to. Here they are telling me they only want positive or values greater than or equal to 0 for x. So we don't want any negative x values. Now we're going to graph it. You guys go ahead and try graphing the regular function and then its inverse, and we'll compare in just a sec. Okay guys, so what we have right now is I've graphed the parent function, which you should be familiar with. You don't have to use an XY table, but I did it to show you how easy it is to graph that inverse. If you do choose to do an XY table, think about it. All you have to do to graph the inverse is switch values. That's it. So our inverse function is square root of x, right? So here's my table. Now remember, we only want values that are bigger than 0 or equal to 0. So I'm going to start here. Okay? 0, 0, and 1, 1 are easy to switch. Those are going to be the same. Now, let's look down here. 2, 4, we're going to switch that. That's going to become 4, 2. So I'm going to go over here. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. There's my inverse function, which is a function because I've only drawn half of that graph. The other half would make it not a function. Okay, so graphing, all it is, guys, is switching x and y and solving for y. That finds you the inverse. Then to graph it, you just have to be careful. Pay attention to that restricted domain. It'll be written as a comma and then x is greater than, some sort of an inequality after. Now, we talked about how the way to check if an actual function is a function is the vertical line test. When you do a horizontal line test on a function, it'll tell you if the function's inverse is a function. Okay, so for example, this is an example of y equals x cubed. If we do a vertical line test, that'll tell us that y equals x cubed is a function. Doing a horizontal line test will tell us if the inverse of this one, so again, if we switch x and y, and then if we solve for y, so y would be the cube root of x, a horizontal line test will tell us that the cube root of x is also a function. Okay? So horizontal line test on a function tells us if whatever the inverse is, if that's going to be a function or not. Here, this is y equals x squared. We already know it's not a function unless you restrict the domain because we just did it. What this tells us, when we graph this function, if we do a horizontal line test, we see, uh-oh, it's crossing in two places. That doesn't mean that this parabola isn't a function. We're still good. This is a function. This horizontal line test tells us that the inverse of it, y equals plus or minus square root of x, is not a function. That's what this tells us. Last thing is you guys are going to have to consider a function, determine if the inverse is a function, and then find the inverse. We're going to just use our calculator here. And I'm hoping that this works for you guys, okay, because I would like to do that. Oh, it doesn't work that way. Of course. Okay, we'll leave it there. So here's my calculator. I'm going to go to my y equals screen, and I'm going to graph this function here. F of x, and we'll have to get it back up there good, is 2x to the third plus 1. So we're going to type that in. 2x raised to the third power plus 1. Then we're going to hit graph, and we see, okay, there's our function. Now, we're going to do the horizontal line test to determine if whatever this inverse is a function. So we'll take a horizontal line and we'll put it through. And we say, look at that. This horizontal line is only crossing my function in one place. So because of that, this inverse is a function. Now let's find the inverse. So we'll say, yep, function. So now we have to find it. We're going to switch x and y. And we're going to solve for y. So we subtract 1, divide by 2, and then take the cube root or raise both sides to the 1/3 power. Same thing, right? I hope you're saying right. So the inverse of f of x equals 2x to the 3rd plus 1 is f of x is equal to the cube root of x minus 1 divided by 2. Again, all we did is we switched f of x and x, and we solved for f of x. Remember, f of x and y are kind of the same thing. Okay? That's it. Write your questions down and bring them with you.